Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman. Yes, you are seeing me for the sixth time today. Thank you, Monster Energy, for keeping me energized all day long. Guys, this is going to be an awesome episode. If you love veterans, first responders, law enforcement, this is the episode for you. My friend is an amazing dude. I love Marines. He's a Marine, prior law enforcement, author, TEDx speaker, the Swiss Army knife of positivity. I'm so grateful to be able to have him come on my show. Joe, my brother, what's going on, dude?
It is a beautiful Wednesday, Richard. I appreciate you having me, man. It's really exciting and humbling, and I'm excited to love on your guest, your audience, and see what we can offer today. So thank you again, and I can't wait to jump this off.
I love you. And guys, if you pick up any of the new swag that's come out, 100% of the proceeds is going to end veteran suicide. I make no money from anything I do, and you know that. So, my brother, first question before we even get started, because I have a traumatic brain injury. If I don't ask, I forget. What is your definition of resiliency?
Yeah, it's great question, because I actually teach this block in many of our deliverables that we provide with my company. And so I have a textbook definition, which is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. But also in that textbook definition, they put the word toughness. And if I could just for a moment, Richard, I want to give my same spiel that I give to people when I'm teaching in person. And that is, I hate that they put the word toughness in the definition of resilience. Why, you ask? Well, I think as first responders, again, as a male combat decorated Marine, former police officer in a big city in San Antonio, I think we collectively have done a poor job of defining what toughness is in our profession. We think tough is just embracing the suck. We think tough is like, yeah, as a cop, I know you just went to this major motor vehicle fatality, you saw a dead baby, but you know what? Like, take the report, go home, be emotionally available for your family, sit there and eat the meatloaf, and then go to bed, get good 7 to 9 hours of sleep tonight, wake up tomorrow on time, well rested, and then show up to work with great energy, positivity, and let's do it again. And we think that suppressing our feelings, compartmentalizing our reality, we think that's tough. And to me, it's not. Toughness is two parts, and this ties into the definition of resiliency for me. The two parts of toughness that go into resiliency, because I want to collectively redefine this. The first is easy. The first is the insight to know something is wrong at that moment. But the second part is the hardest part, and that is then the courage to act and do something about it. Now, a lot of us know something's wrong. A lot of us know something's off. I'm irritable. I'm angry. I'm mad. I'm not well rested. I'm pissed off all the time, whatever it is. But very few are willing to do things about it. And so that to me is my long-winded roundabout way to say resiliency is, yes, it is about the capacity to recover from things, but it's also about the insight to know when you have something going on, and then the courage to actually do something about it and not just keep shoving and suppressing, because eventually it's going to leak out, bleed out onto your family, the community, and that's when bad stuff happens.
I love it. And that's a great definition, because I mean, you have to know when to say when. Unfortunately, anything under pressure, eventually, if it doesn't leak out, is going to explode. And usually, it's our inner circle that we explode. We explode upon. So let's hop into DeLorean. Let's go way back. Tell me a little bit about where you come from, where did you grow up, and why did you join the Marine Corps when you could have joined anything else but the Marine Corps?
Yeah. Recruiters are good at what they do, I'll tell you that. So I East Coast kid. I'll give you the high level, actually, Richard, because I think stories matter here, and feel free to cut me off at any time. It's your show. But I have no memories prior to 7 years old still, and I've been in therapy 15 years. My parents married young. I have one sister who's 3 years older than me, and my parents married straight out of high school. And my father was in the Navy, and we were stationed down in Norfolk, Virginia, and he was out on a routine med float 6-month tour. And my mom got lonely, started having an affair, and the guy she was having an affair with started routinely coming over to the house on base housing. This was another member of the military, and then he started sexually abusing me. And this went on for a while. And I tell my mom it's happening. She says it's not. We don't talk about that stuff. Okay. And at some point, back to what I was talking about earlier with my definition of resilience, but this is where like all of this work that I do now started for me. I tell people if when someone doesn't listen to the words you say, the behaviors will always reveal the truth. And at some point, I decided my sister was in the bathtub. It was a weekend during the day. My mom was sleeping on the couch. I went into her purse. She used to be a smoker. And I grabbed a book of matches. I went into my bedroom, shut the door, and I'm trying to set my bed on fire. And I'm lighting a match and it goes out. I light a match and it goes out. And eventually the bed catches on fire. I panic. I roll out. I go bang on the door, tell my sister we got to go, wake up my mom, get out. The fire department shows up very quickly. It didn't burn the house down, but it did burn my bed, charred the floor and part of the wall. But I'll never forget, I'm standing outside with my mom and sister, not really realizing the severity of what I had done. And this fireman, bless him, I have a belief that people are doing the best they can with what they have based on what they know. And that fireman walked out real aggressive towards me. I'm 7 years old. And with his knife hand, which I didn't know about the knife hand till I got into the Marine Corps, but I learned it at 7. But real aggressive. He's like, young man, if you ever start another fire again, you'll spend the rest of your life in prison. You understand me? And I was like, whoa. So I started crying. Oh my God, I'm in trouble. And, that's when I tell people right there, like, pause. I wish that fireman, and again, I truly think he was doing the best he could. But if he had gone through, this is why in my training, we offer de-escalation training with my company. We'll talk about it later. But when we train people, same thing with the book. The reason I wrote this book is to give people these skills, not just as first responders, but also as parents. When you have children that are doing things that we don't understand or we don't like them or we think that it's a problem, yeah, that can be true. But what's also true is there's usually a higher calling or a higher need of something that's not being addressed or identified. And I wish that fireman had pulled me to the side and said, hey, buddy, like, what are you doing, man? Like, surely you're not a 7-year-old arsonist. Like, why did you start a fire? But he didn't do that. He didn't offer me any help or hope. He just threatened me. And so fast forward, the abuse continues. Eventually my sister tells our grandmother, she finds out about it. My father finds out, comes home. It's a whole mess. So I didn't end up going to school much of my 3rd grade year. I got held back because I was in therapy 3 days a week. My parents ended up getting divorced. There was a custody battle that ensued. My mom had no chance of winning custody. My father got custody, but now he got kicked out of the Navy. And because he got into an altercation with this guy, it was just a whole mess. And so he gets out of the Navy after like 12 years in, and now he's just working. And he gets into 3 more relationships, all women I did not care for at all. They were very abusive. My father became a raging alcoholic. He was very physically abusive. And at like 15, 16 years old, I was like, I'm not doing this no more. And I'm going to leave. And it was like 3 p.m. I walked home from school. My stepmom's having sex in the house with some guy, not my dad, while he's working. And he got home that night. And I'm like, hey, Dad, do you know Alex is having sex with some guy while you're working? And he was like, yeah, we haven't been together. She just has nowhere to go. And I hated this woman. And I was like, no. I was like, man, I'm not doing this no more. So I left and started just staying with friends and different people. And then finally, my girlfriend, 9th grade, 10th grade, and 11th grade, her parents, our junior year, were like, hey, man, come stay with us. And I was like, thank God. And I'm almost ending here, Richard. I promise I'm coming to a point.
Bro, you could take all day because this is the shit people need to hear.
Yeah. No, it's all serendipity of how I ended up where I am. But, finally, my girlfriend of 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, her parents bring me in, and I'm like, thank God, like, how am I ever going to thank them? Because I was a junior, I'm playing sports. I really didn't enjoy school because I was a really traumatized kid. And I remember being acutely suicidal at 15 years old, just thinking like, I just don't want to do this anymore. Like, I don't want to live anymore. I just want to die. And when my girlfriend's parents brought me in, it was like, well, I don't have a job. I can't pay them. I don't know how to thank them. And then it hit me, Richard. And I was like, oh, I know. I'll get their daughter pregnant for them. It was a gift, having a baby in high school. And I say that completely joking. Haha, pause for laughter. But so I became a father in high school. That is the reason I joined the Marine Corps, because my senior year of high school, I'm having a baby. My best friend at the time, Eric Mazzio, he is in the delayed entry program. So he's like, hey, man, I know you're terrified. I know you're scared. I know you wanted to go to college and play soccer, but I'm in this delayed entry program. I'm going to have my recruiter come meet you and talk to you. And I'm like, all right, fine. Marine Corps recruiter comes, shows up. This is in upstate New York. And he does a great job. Like, hey, man, don't worry about nothing. We got you. We'll take care of you, your daughter, housing, healthcare. You ain't got to worry about nothing. And I was like, that sounds great. And he's like, but what do you want to do? And I was like, I want to play soccer. And he said, the Marine Corps is a soccer team. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah. I was like, that's amazing. I want to go play soccer for the Marine Corps then. And I'm happy to report that this was in the year 2000. It was previous to 9/11. I did play soccer in the Marine Corps one time in Iraq against shoeless children. And so the recruiter didn't lie to me. He just had a different version of what soccer in the Marine Corps was going to be. So I did my 4 years. 9/11 happens. I do 2 combat tours. It was very traumatic for me. I'll never be a combat veteran, Richard, that sits on your show and tells people, I'm a hero. War was scary. The first time I had to pull my trigger and I shot an Iraqi and watched him go down and die, I died inside. I didn't enjoy it. I understood the mission. I understood it's me or them. I understood that. I was trained well for it, but I didn't like it. And because I was young and still had an underdeveloped brain, and then the fact that I was celebrated for it, my gunnery sergeant came over and he was just raw and hooting and like just so hyped that I took this shot and made that shot. And it was a very, very dark moment for me, because I remember I just have to survive this. And that was exactly what had been happening since I was 7 years old, is I just have to survive this. So then I get out of the Marine Corps after 4 years. I moved to South Texas because I was stationed out in California in 1st Battalion, 4th Marines, Southern California. I couldn't afford to stay there. I didn't want to go back to the winters of New York. My best friend, Jesse, who I met in the Marine Corps of 24 years now, he was like, hey, man, you should move to Texas. And so I was like, well, I'm not a farmer, but I guess I'll check it out. And he was like, no, man, San Antonio is a big city with like highways and buildings. And he was right. And so I moved to San Antonio in 2004. I got on the police department, contrary to what a lot of people are going to really maybe understand, is I really got in tired of being around death, tired of being around trauma, not really understanding police work. I just thought I could genuinely go and help people. But then I go to the academy for 8 months, realize like, whoa, this is like a whole different world. Like we're actually talking about like cops and robbers type stuff and like shooting and tactics, and like it's dangerous and people are bad and oh no. And then I got out there and I'm like paranoid, scared as all get out because all the videos I saw of cops getting killed. And I'm like, Jesus. And it took me about 2 years to really realize like, wait a minute. Like people are always running from us. Like very rarely is any problem finding us. Like everyone runs from us. And I kind of feel like we've been sold a false narrative here, or at least an incomplete one. Yeah, the world can be dangerous. Yeah, people will do dumb shit and bad things for sure. But I really feel like I'm just constantly afraid and paranoid every call, every situation. And that's not serving me. And then the mental health unit pops up. I go through the crisis intervention training, and that transformed everything for me. And I want to pause there, Richard, so we can just make this more conversational, because that's a lot. But that's why I got into the Marine Corps. It was simply because I had a kid in high school, simply because I was totally like mismanaged, no parenting figure, really no one like loving on me, taking care of me. It was just pure abuse and violence. And I finally left it. And my girlfriend's parent took me in. We were kids doing kid things, and had unprotected sex and got pregnant. And that's why I joined the Marine Corps. It wasn't because of patriotism and all that. It was strictly out of need to survive, which is something that I became really good at.
Sounds like a Kid Rock song. Yeah. But so as you see, I'm writing stuff down because it means a lot to me. I want to make sure I don't miss anything, especially with a TBI. I have to write stuff down. But your story really resonates with me because I don't remember anything probably from 7 back, because I grew up in an abused household.
Yep.
And I don't remember. It's so repressed. I mean, I'm still working through things. So I totally understand that. But let me talk about the abuse real quick, because I had a friend of mine. She's a former major, um, Annette Wittenberger. She was on the show, and says she was sexually abused between ages of like 5 and 9. And she says, and the reason I want to bring it out is because when a child is abused, normally, I mean, a lot of times, not all the time, if a child is outgoing and gregarious, a lot of times they'll get withdrawn. They'll be onto themselves. They'll go away from strangers, or the opposite. If they were shy, that sometimes after the abuse they become outgoing, gregarious, partying, loud. So for parents out there, because I'm a parent of I got 3 kids, and I just did it. I was a panelist on the show this Friday. That 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 5 boys are abused.
Yeah.
So what should parents be looking out for?
Yeah, it's so hard because, and also of those statistics you brought up, Richard, almost always it's someone known to the family, a relative, a friend, someone close that has access and starts to really groom and foster that trust. And so it's hard because also with children, behaviors are consistently changing, right? Based on development, based on this whole phenomenon of edutainment. And, people are learning through education. They're learning their education through entertainment. And, kids are consuming so much more than we ever did as kids too. And I'm 43, but we didn't have screen time and phones. Like we just went outside and talked to each other's face and played with like sticks and rocks and balls in the road and rode bikes. And you don't see that anymore. Now it's all a connected, digitized world where one, it's a lot easier to groom and build those relationships much earlier. I've seen statistics that show that kids now as young as 7 years old are having their first exposure to pornography, right? And so what's that doing is sparking the curiosity and normalizing very adult sexual behavior, but so much earlier now, and access to people, to children. So the biggest thing is monitor what they're doing without being the helicopter parent that's overbearing, because also that could push them away. And then just be willing to have conversations much earlier than you're comfortable with is what I would offer, right? A lot of people are like, oh, not my kid, not my kid, not my kid. We think we live in a bubble, but I'll tell you, your children are usually away from you more than they're with you, unless you're homeschooling or doing something like that. But they spend more time away from you. And then kids learn very early on, just as we did, to put on a performance, create our representative self. I know how I'm supposed to act when I'm home, but I'm very different when I'm in my social settings or my friends groups. And then monitor their phones, like genuinely learn technology to know what it is they're looking at, what are they consuming, what social apps are they on. If I took any one of your phones and just say for TikTok, for example, and I just scrolled through for 3 minutes, I could tell so much about you as a person because the algorithm only feeds you what you spend time on, right? Same thing with YouTube, with Instagram, shorts, reels, all of that. It's only going to give you more. You'll get a random pop-up, but for the most part, the consistent thing is what you spend most time on, or the things you share or like or comment on. And it knows that. So it's the same with your children, right? Just look at the things being fed to them. Is it provocative? Is it inspirational? Is it educational? Is it like with my children, my 13-year-old son, his is all sports. It's all just sports, football. And then every now and again, some random video pops up. I hear a swear word and I'm like, hey man, he's like, I know. I didn't do anything, right? Like gets all defensive, but it's always going to be there. And the more access they have to that, the more likely it is to create these problematic changes. And then the other thing too is both on the abuser and the abusee side is children, to the point you made, Richard, is like how it changes their personality is, I mentioned this early in the show, is like, if someone says something to you, like, mom, this thing is happening to me, and mom says, no, it's not, eventually the behaviors are going to reveal what they're trying to tell you. So anger is the mask of depression. When you see an angry child, boy or girl, and they're acting out and they're frustrated and angry and yelling and screaming and posturing, there's a really, really good chance that they're very sad, but they don't know how to use their words yet, right? And so again, we have to not get distracted by the surface level or external behaviors, because I tell people all behavior is communication, and all human behavior, almost all human behavior, is a distraction. It's a distraction away from the truth of what I want to tell you. I just don't know how yet. And so often it's why you see guys like, when they're mad and angry and they're like puffing their chest out and taking their clothes off and all this stuff. They're just posturing. It's primal, it's animalistic, it's what we do to scare people. But deep down inside, there's an insecurity there of, you just pricked something in me. I didn't like the way that felt, and I'm scared to communicate that. So let me overcompensate by just raging out right now, because that's far more acceptable.
And I couldn't say it any better. Now, we're both East Coast kids. I'm a Jersey boy.
All right.
I'm actually, if I go stand on my front porch, I'm actually standing in the shadows of the Twin Towers where they once stood.
Oh, wow.
Lost many friends on that day, and if it wasn't for 9/11, my life would not be. I wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. Yep. So, and you mentioned, the taking the shot, and celebrating the shots. Or being celebrated. The reason I wear this hat, or any hat on my shows, is to honor Chris Kyle. And I told his wife that anytime I'm on my show, I'm going to wear a hat in honor of Chris. So that's why I wear this hat on any show or any podcast or any stage I speak upon. It's all to honor Chris, because he actually lost his life helping somebody with post-traumatic stress. So that's why I wear this hat. But what is it like? You East Coast boys, New York State, go Yankees, woo!
That's right, Yankees.
What was it like on 9/11 being an East Coast boy?
It was hard. I was already in, like I said. So I remember I was out in Camp Pendleton, and because of the time change, right? Like it was 6 a.m. there. And I remember I was up getting ready for work to head in, and just kind of flipped the TV on, and making breakfast, whatever I was doing. But I remember I was in base housing, and I had walked down the stairs, turned the TV on in the living room, go into the kitchen, making something to eat, and then I see it, and I'm like, that's weird. Well, because we're from there, so my wife at the time, my daughter's mom from high school, her dad was actually down in the city, and so he might actually been on the Jersey side, but nonetheless, he was on a bridge and had a clear shot of Manhattan there. And so he called out and was like, "Hey, I'm watching this happening." But I remember that everyone just thought it was an accident, right? Like it was just like a fluke, terrible thing. Oh my goodness. But then when it happened the second time, it was like, this is off. Something's not right. And then we went into work, and then it was just everyone kind of gathered around. We're all just rallied around each other watching it. And then it was like very quickly, I remember, because we were already scheduled to deploy that January in 2002 was going to be our first 6-month deployment. And that obviously happened in September. And I want to say it was like the first week of November, we were already gone. And so they moved us up, they expedited everything, expedited our workups, threw us on a ship, and we were gone. And we started heading over. It wasn't our routine Westpac deployment. That was supposed to be 6 months of fun for the Marines. But we still stopped in Hawaii, and then Guam, Singapore, and then we made our way off the southern coast there of Kuwait, and started just flying into Afghanistan, doing helicopter operations, taking over airfields. But it all just happened so quick. And I remember, because again, all my family is like, the closest relative I had was in Albany. And so no one was really in the city. And so it wasn't like my family is there, but it was like, that's my state. It's my favorite city in the world. And that's an attack on the country. I truly, as a Marine, was like, I'm geared up. Like, I'm ready for what we've got to do. The problem was when I actually had to do it, and I did it, it did not yield the results that I thought it would, where I would have like pride. It totally freaking jacked me up, man, where I was like, holy shit, like, what am I doing here? Like, I'm a 19-year-old kid. Like, yeah, I get it. And rah, and like, yeah, dirt and sand and like country core, got it. But this is a serious situation here. This isn't like hypotheticals. This isn't a training exercise. Like, I am seeing death daily, because I was with the war started March 19th of 03. And that first deployment was really uneventful. So that's the other key thing here is right after 9/11, we deploy, I go to Afghanistan, and we're like taking over airfields and like doing stuff, but there's really no action. Like, nothing bad happened. It was a whole bunch of just surrendering, like, here, take the airstrip, take our hangars, do whatever you guys want. And I was flying in for one day, would do an operation, fly back to the ship, get chow, shower, go to sleep, fly back the next day. And I did that for months, but nothing really significant happened. So then we go back home, and then just a couple months later, they're like, all right, we're going to start working up again, because they're talking about going into Iraq. And we're like, yeah, whatever. And so then we start training, and they send us out to 29 Palms. We do our training out in the desert there. And then sure enough, like, we go over there, and we got back to Kuwait in January of 03. And no, February of 03. February of 03, we're there. And I remember, talk about a psychological freaking nightmare, Richard. Like, by the time we got to Kuwait, set up our tents, set up everything, until the invasion, March 19th, for about 6 weeks, we were probably told no less than 5 times, like, pack all your stuff. We're going home. We're flying home tomorrow. President Bush isn't going to give the order. We're going to head out. All right. So we pack our stuff. And then, like, nope, unpack. We're going to invade. We're going in tonight. Get ready. And we're like, oh shit. All right. So then we unpack. And then 4 days later, a week later, like, all right, pack your stuff. We're going home. The psychological impact of that, of like getting ready to like, okay, we're going in to invade. And then like, nope, kidding, we're going home. Like, oh, cool, we're going home. And then nope, just kidding, unpack, we're going in. Multiple times. I remember vividly March 19th when they're like, hey, we're going in tonight. Everyone was like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like, we're so checked out. No one believes you. You're full of shit. And then it was like midnight, 1 a.m. So it was dark. And I remember they're like, no, really, like, load up. We're going in. And we're like, what? Seriously? Like, yeah, like, seriously, jump in the Humvees. We're crossing over into Highway 1, and we're going up straight into Iraq. And I remember we got into these Amtrak vehicles, and we're driving up, and for hours, just like, can't see anything, just sitting in the back, right? Just the little red light in the front, and it's just dark and loud. And then we come to a stop. And this was the moment I knew, like, oh shit, like, I am very dispensable here. They pulled all of us out. We were enlisted. They pulled all the enlisted out of the Amtraks, and they were like, all right, all of you Marines, go get into those Humvees, softback Humvees, by the way. And they were putting all the officers into the Amtraks, because if you look like 2 clicks ahead, all you see is tracer rounds, and we're driving right into an active firefight. And so they're like, protect the officers, put the enlisted in the softback, and we're going to go. And I'm like, this is some shit here. And just to round this story out of my first like 72 hours in war, and how it really, really broke me, was that first conflict we had, the first firefight we had. They told us, they got on the comms, they said, hey, nobody look to the west. Everything to the west is friendly. Don't even look over there. All the enemy targets are to the east. So we're driving up Highway 1. Now I'm sitting in a Humvee on the passenger side. I'm a right-handed shot. I've never trained, 1, shooting sitting down in a vehicle. 2, I have very minimal training of weak hand shooting with my rifle. So I'm like, this is super awkward of like, how am I going to do this? So I'm like, well, I'm going to put it in my left arm and just figure this out. And we had a machine gunner on our Humvee. And I remember driving up into this town. Everyone's looking out to the east, to the right of the vehicle convoy. And we're just waiting. And we're doing like 2-3 miles an hour, like foot off the gas, no brake, just like idling through this little village. And then suddenly the gunner shoots. And I'm like, what the hell is he shooting at? I don't know. But I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. Like, boom, I shoot. I don't know at what, but just shooting. I got my MVGs on, but I'm like, we're all just shooting. Okay. And then our convoy comes to a stop. And I'm like, why are we stopping? Now, obviously, I'm not an officer. I'm a kid that was trained how to shoot a weapon, but I don't understand like military tactics. In my mind, I'm like, let's just haul ass and drive through this like a drive-by shooting. That's not how things work. But the CO from, it was 3-1, their company commander comes out, stops our convoy. Well, apparently there was a breakdown in comms. 3-1 started clearing this village on foot. We're shooting them in their backs. Friendly fire, first day into the war. Their commander stops our convoys, like, who the hell's in charge? What are you guys doing? They had to medevac a couple Marines. I have no idea if anyone died. I have no idea if they got medically discharged. I have no clue, right? This is in 2003. We don't know anything. And that was my first like few hours into the war. And then I remember sun came up and it was just pure destruction everywhere. Dead children, burnt women, decapitated bodies, exploded everything. And I'm like, where am I? Like my first 24 to 72 hours, it was a bad dream I could not wake up from. And knowing that breakdown in comms that happened, I lost like a lot of confidence that we know what the hell we're doing. We're just over here trying to figure this out. And it was just pure chaos. And I was there for almost 10 months. And it was just, it was unbelievable and a challenging time of my life for sure.
And were you just thinking, damn, I got 4 more years of this shit?
Yeah. Well, at that time too, but still, yes, I was like, and I remember, and this is what's sad too. Shout out to Sergeant Moses Rocha. You know, we kind of had an agreement amongst the friends of us in this group of Marines, and it was like, hey, they're throwing this tax-free reenlistment bonus at us. Like, don't do it, because we knew the writing was on the wall. We knew this wasn't going to be a quick war, and it's like, hey, they're throwing 35, I think it was 35 or $40,000 tax-free at us to reenlist. Don't take it, man. Like, this is not good for us. And we all like kind of agreed to it. And Moses was the one that was like, I think I'm going to do it, guys. And he was a 5-year Marine on his first enlistment. Yeah, I'm pretty sure a 5-year. And so he was coming up for renewal anyway. And he took it over there, took the money. And as soon as we got back, they redeployed him. And within his first week over there, his helicopter got shot down and he died. And so he died in combat. There was like 5 of us that were real tight in our unit. And he died in combat. And then Dwayne Dawkins, who was another real close friend of ours, came back, struggled for a couple years, and was he became a lawyer in California. He's from Huntington Beach, like beautiful man, smart, great physical shape, and just, you know, lost his battle and ended up taking his own life and died by suicide a couple years after we got out. And so, you know, it's tough because I've struggled with suicidal ideation since I was a kid. And then another one of our Marines that was in our unit killed himself in Iraq during the war, like on his fire watch post, was just like, I ain't doing this no more, and shot himself. So it just became something that I was saturated with. You know, I was just around it so much that I've become so desensitized to it, but I've also sadly kind of accepted the dark truth of this is a real possibility in my life. And again, I'm not telling you anything that I'm not actively working through, because like I just had therapy 3 hours before this podcast right now. Like I go every month. I've been in therapy 15 years, but it's just maintenance for me, because I know what happens if I don't stay engaged in my treatment. I can very quickly fall back into those old habits and dark thoughts, and it becomes quite scary for me.
And I get it, Joe. I mean, I'm a suicide survivor. So, I mean, so I get it. But let's talk about, you know, because, you know, you were one person before those shots started firing. Now you're totally different person. And like, I'm a part of a lot of groups, and one of my groups I'm a part of is the Vetpreneur Tribe. And one of my friends, Sergeant Nick, talks about is once you get out of the military, whether you decide to leave, whether they retire you, medically retire me like me, the military doesn't give a shit about you, first of all.
Yeah.
Your phone stops ringing. You don't have the camaraderie that you used to have. Most of us don't do 20 years, so we don't get a paycheck. So we don't have any money. And then we don't have a mission. And a lot of us end up at the bottom of a bottle, like I did, or the end of a barrel, or both. So you knew you were going to get out. But what was your military transitioning like? Was it what you expected? Did you struggle at all?
Yes, short answer is yes, I did. Longer answer is I didn't recognize I was until probably 5, 6, 7 years later. Um, Again, getting out was, it was almost like I was excited because I knew I was going to be at peace of like not having to go to war. So I was like, yeah, this is a no brainer for me. But again, you know, Richard, because I really didn't have any real solid parenting as a kid, my mind never worked in a way of like preparedness. And so I went into the Marine Corps as a child. And I would say when the shot started ringing, I quickly became a man, and not in the best sense, but just I have to grow up fast now because this is a different world. And then when I got out, it was like, well, wait a minute. Now I'm just kind of, this is it. Like, I don't have like a mentor. I don't have, there's no one hand holding me. There's no one telling me where to be, when, what to wear, how. Like there's no agenda. I just got to figure this out. And especially coming to Texas where I'm like, I have no family here. I have no connections here. I got out of the Marine Corps. Jesse and I drove out to San Antonio, and I was married at the time and had our daughter, but also we were just getting divorced because we were together since we were kids. 2 deployments, we grew apart. Her and I get along great now, but we were kids, and I cheated on her, which became my big problem. And I'm happy to talk about that because it's what my vice was. And you brought up the end of a barrel or the bottom of a bottle. And I think that those are two very common ones, but there's also a lot more that are not as common or prevalent where people think it's not that big of a deal. And I'm telling you, it is. Um, my vice, my drug, and I don't say this proud. I'm not trying to like be funny or crass at all, but I tell people, thank God I never like turned to alcohol. Thank God I didn't use heroin or meth or even marijuana or anything that would have a social consequence. My drug, my vice was women. And as a very insecure man that had sexual trauma, that has combat exposure, PTSD, undiagnosed at the time, who truly did not love myself, did not like myself, believed I'm not lovable, believed I'm not worthy of anything, surrounded with death and destruction. What a very easy way to validate my own emotions and insecurity than to go get a woman, have them like fawning over me of like, oh my God, you're amazing. Like, oh my God, you're so funny. Oh, you're so funny. And I'm like, yeah, like, isn't that great? Like, do you want to touch it? And meanwhile, I'm married, or I'm going through a divorce, or I have a girlfriend. And it was like, I thrive in chaos. And so I would sabotage my relationships. And so, like, yeah, it wasn't alcohol. And yes, at those times, I didn't put a gun in my mouth because this was all before I ever started getting help. But I thought, I'm not a drug addict. I'm not doing anything that's jeopardizing my career. I'm a great cop. I show up every day early. I have great numbers. I do great stuff for the community. I know I'm a good cop. I've got my shit together. But my personal life in my own home was a nightmare. By the time I was 30 years old, I already had 4 kids from 3 different women. I have 3 divorces, and my kids aren't all from wives. It was an absolute mess. And I was using women as my alcohol, as my drug, as my way to sabotage. And it was my wife leaving me saying, like, hey, I hate you, but something is seriously wrong. And I remember vividly sitting in my apartment, staring at my gun belt because I'm a cop at the time. And I'm like, that's the moment where I'm like, I'm going to eat this gun. I'm tired of having these kids that I don't actually get to raise. I'm tired of making these stupid choices so easily without even caring about consequences, not realizing at the time that I'm sabotaging myself. And I said, I'm just tired of getting it wrong all the time. I am a burden. I am a nuisance. I am a mistake, and I deserve to die. And I remember staring at my gun belt, drinking booze, just trying to build the courage. And I wanted so badly to die that day, as I have many days. And I'm like, there's zero embellishment in this, Richard. I don't know why, but in that very moment, it was vividly clear to me was either A, take out the gun from the holster and shoot yourself, or B, you need to go to college. But either way, you have to go to the VA. And I was like, what? Because I hated school, I thought. And I live in San Antonio. We have the Center for Intrepid, all these great prosthetics, the
Yeah.
SAMC, the level 1 burn center. We have and I'm used to seeing people physically dismembered or injured. And I'm like, I'm fine. But true story. Like I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to the VA. And I walked in and I went to the vet center and I walked in. I was like, I don't know what I need, but I am hurting right now and I'm in trouble and I need something. And I met my first therapist and it was amazing. I was very lucky to have a great experience with my first therapist. And it really changed everything for me. And now, like, my therapist isn't at the VA anymore. I have a private one that I pay a lot of money to go to privately, but I'm still engaged in treatment nonetheless. But I learned through those early years of therapy of like, yeah, because you thrive in chaos, anytime things are going really well for you, you're going to destroy this. And people don't understand the meaning behind our behaviors, right? And this is all people, even individuals themselves. You don't ask yourself the hard questions as to why most often. Like, why do I do this thing? Right? Why do I just sit on my couch and binge watch hours of TV and drink alcohol every night? If that's your story, why do I do this thing where I know it's not serving me? But we won't ask ourselves those hard questions. So it allows us just to gain complacency, become comfortable, and then just assign meaning and say, this is just who I am. But is it the best you could be? Is it a version of yourself that when you go to bed at night, you feel proud of? And a lot of people, the answer is no, which is why we have so much anxiety and depression across our globe. And I want to offer this too, because it's coming up for me right now, is just a thought for your audience is to think about this. If the only thing in life that truly matters is how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself, then how are you living? And for a lot of people, that is not good. We avoid at all costs being alone in our thoughts because the scariest place for a man to be is alone in their thoughts. And it's like, I don't want to go there. So what do? I numb and I avoid. Numb, buffer, and avoid. And what I call the 4 plagues of the first responder, back to your bottle and barrel. Richard, the 4 plagues of the first responder, in my experience, and there are more, but the reasons why a first responder, veteran, cop would kill themselves is or the behaviors that lead up to it, right, is what I call the 4 plagues, which is chips, tits, Netflix, and sprints. And that is food or alcohol, overconsumption. When I say tits, I mean sex, pornography addiction, or extramarital stuff, or just sleeping with multiple partners, trying to feel anything. Netflix is any screen time, doom scrolling TikTok for hours on end, or watching TV every day, all day. And then sprints is the gym. Even getting in shape is great, but going to the gym 5-6 hours a day at the neglect of your family because you want to feel a certain way about yourself, or you want to put on a show for other people that don't actually matter to you, but your family is being neglected. All of those things are problematic. And that, in my experience of doing a lot of officer wellness programs, training, creating, hospitalizing our cops, it was almost always one of those 4 things. And again, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I want to just mention, I'm going on 36 years of sobriety and clean time.
Congrats. Hell yeah. Good for you.
I know that if I'm heading for a relapse, it's going to be one of the 4 things. I'm hungry, I'm angry, I'm lonely, or I'm tired. I'm heading for a relapse. But I also know that, like when I talked with Grant Cardone, he said self-awareness is a motherfucker. He said you have to become self-aware to know your triggers, to know what's going to set you off so you can head it off at the pass. And I think a lot of what you're saying is the 4 pillars. I don't remember the exact words you used, but I think once you get to know those 4 things, if you see yourself going to the gym for 5-6 hours when an hour would have done great, or, okay, you watch one video, but all of a sudden, you're 12 hours into a Netflix marathon. That's when because like my wife will even say, she'll notice these things and she'll be like, you need to get your ass to a meeting. She says, I'm starting to see it. So I think we need to have people around us that know our triggers, but we also need to know our triggers, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Self-awareness is absolutely, and it's a superpower. It's hard. It is very hard, but it's your superpower. And the more self-aware you can become, and again, not out of convenience of like, oh, I'm very self-aware. People can say it all day long, but it's like, they're self-aware to the version of themselves they've created for the public to consume. That is not true self-awareness of like take away all your titles. Like, you're not a veteran, you're not a husband, you're not a father, you are Richard Kaufman. And when all of your titles are gone, what is left of you? And a lot of people are like, oh shit, I don't know. Like, because we think we are our titles, we think we are our profession, our job, our like, no, I am a father, I am a husband. No, you're not. Those are just titles. But without any of that, without any profession, job, accomplishments, titles, things, what is left? And people don't know who they truly are. They don't understand the essence of like what makes them whole or complete. And this is why, like, again, with I did 15 years with the San Antonio Police Department, but 11 on the mental health unit. I didn't have one use of force. And it was because what I learned was, as I start going to therapy, the more I help myself, the better I am to show up for these other people that are hurting. And I see myself in them. And so now, and I even posted this today on my Instagram, which I welcome your people to follow me, by the way. But it's like, I put in my Instagram, I took a picture of my therapist office and I said, selfishly, this feels like I go to therapy for me. But every time I go to therapy, while it's for me, it allows me to better love all of you. Why? Because I can see you through a different lens. I'm not seeing you through this like convenient posturing lens that I've created, my representative self of like, I am a business owner. I am a Marine Corps veteran and former police officer and a business owner. I'm a CEO. Yeah, who cares? Like, nobody actually gives a shit. Like, what are you doing when no one's watching? What's true about you when no one's around? And how do you treat people if no one's going to know about it? Like, those are the things that actually matter. Like, what people say about you when you're not in their presence, that's something that I think more people should really think about. And not put stock in that we should care what other people think about us, but are we living our lives in a way that's authentic to us? Because there's a lot, and I've learned this a lot over the last couple of years too, Richard, is, kudos to the work you're doing in this podcast. I love it. And you know this to be true. And we haven't talked about this before the show, but there are a dime a dozen of everyone popping up being gurus and experts and wellness and resiliency and first responders, supporters, this and that. And everyone's an expert now, and suicide's a problem. We need to do something about it. And I'm an expert because I read this book. People are just coming out of the woodwork right now. And it's like, well, have you actually dealt with your own shit? Like, have you actually dealt with your own stuff to be in this position to say, suddenly you have the best advice? And in my experience, that is not the case a lot of times. There's a lot of people saying all the right words, but they don't have their own house in order. And again, that's not a judging thing, because I'm a work in progress for life, but I'm also an open book. And I admit, like, I am a shit show of a human, but I'm trying to show up and be a better version of myself every day.
Now, and I want to talk about this. I think it's important what you said. I almost took myself out twice. The first time was because, just like you said, and it hit home and it hit my heart. After 23 years, I got thrown out for being a drug addict in the military. I got back in again, which is very rare, and was almost thrown out again until 9/11 saved my life.
Wow.
And then I get hurt on duty and I lose 60% of my vision. I'm 60% blind right now. But when they finally told me, you're no longer Sergeant Kaufman, and I had to go home and hang up my uniform for the last time. And that's when I almost took myself out, because, like you said, once you're no longer that thing, whatever it is, whether it's a police officer, a veteran, whatever it is, once you hang up that uniform for the last time, a lot of us, like me, I didn't know who Richard was.
Yep.
So it was scary to me, because I'm like, okay, I've been trying to be the ultimate soldier for the last 23 years. What am I? Who am I? And I just had a title, because every time I got pulled over, it's like, okay, here's my ID. And they're like, okay, Sergeant Kaufman. Well, that's not there. And not only did I lose my career, I lost my vision. So now I'm half a man. And that's why I tried to take myself out, but thank God that didn't work. But then also about 4 months ago, I almost took myself out because a first responder, he was a police officer. We were talking that same day, and he took himself out. And I got so dark depression, that I almost took myself out. But my wife seen me. She said, what's wrong? And I'm like, I was shaking and crying. I'm like, I don't know I don't know. I'm not safe. So she took me in the bedroom, just wrapped her arms around me, let me cry it out, hugged me, and said it's going to be okay. And then I went out that day and I wrote my obituary. I wrote my own obituary that I keep in my wallet. That now, anytime I think about taking myself out, I said in my obituary that I'm going to be 100 years old, the loving husband, the loving father, and all these things I wrote in my own obituary. Now I have to live up to that. So for me, that's my safe thing, is writing my own obituary, which is kind of morbid. But for me, that's how I keep myself in check. But even people like us, we get weak. You know, I coach a lot of people, but even coaches need coaches, right?
Yeah.
And that's why, you know, and I want to ask you a specific question.
Yep.
And well, two things I want to talk about. I want to talk about moral injury.
Yep.
Because I never hear that talked about, almost ever. This is one of the only few podcasts that we actually talk about it. But also, why is it that the average male in the United States lives till 78? The average veteran or first responder lives to 58. Why? What's the 20-year difference?
I can give you an actual like truth scientific answer to that, Richard. So yes, you and I've seen close around that, where I've seen the average life expectancy in the United States is about 76 to 78. And for first responders, it is 64 to 66. Okay. So yes, but on average, we are giving up that 12 to 15 years, and it could be upwards of 20. We also know that, for example, in the Federal Bureau of Prisons for correctional officers that do 25 to 30 years, their life expectancy post-retirement is only 3 years. So that is unbelievable. And so the question is why? The number one reason is cardiovascular issues is a health issue, right? That's the number one killer of why we die younger. But I don't want people just to think like, oh, okay, so it's just cardiovascular issues. Yes. But why do we have cardiovascular issues? Because of cortisol. Now, where do we get cortisol? It's a stress hormone. Why are we stressed out? Because we believe the things showed to us and told to us that the world is dangerous, people are bad, and you're going to die. And for any of my fellow first responders and firefighters and paramedics and correction officers and dispatchers and people that are in the first responder military as well, the military, it's different for me, because the military, there's no, like, other than the psychological war happening in their minds, there's no war happening in the United States, right? So they know there's a workup, there's a deployment. Even if they're on a plane, they're flying, they still have transition time, usually days, to prepare for the deployment for the combat element. With first responders, there's multiple mini deployments in every day. And so you get your dispatch calls your number. Cool. What is it? Oh, it's a barking dog complaint. Easy. No big deal. I go take care of it, knock it out, code the report, move on. Dispatch calls again. Boom. Oh, it's a domestic. Okay. That's serious. I remember in the academy, they said domestics are the most dangerous calls. This is where cops get killed the most, other than traffic stops. Domestics are bad. Okay. I've got to ramp myself up now. I've got to be tactically sound. I'm going to show up to the situation and I'm on guard. The problem is a lot of first responders will not ratchet that back down. They will not regulate their parasympathetic nervous system. They just stay amped up. Even if their next call is a routine call, even if their next call, or that's their last call. And then they go home and they bang energy drinks or the neighbor or way too much food or something else. And then they sleep terribly because they've got intrusive thoughts. They've got sleep disturbances. And then how do they live their lives off duty? They're still on duty. They got an ankle holster. They've got an inside the pant holster. They sit with their back at the wall at a restaurant with their family so they can watch the exits. Why? Like, who is coming for you? But here's what I tell people, Richard, and I want your audience to know, because they don't know me yet, hopefully. Nothing I ever share or say is to make people less safe. But I'm talking specifically to police officers right now. Yes, there are people in this world that will do bad things, and there's a chance that you could die on duty or off duty. One thing we know for sure is we're all going to die. The Stoics say memento mori, right? Marcus Aurelius says memento mori, embrace your death, but let that dictate what you do and say and think. Don't fear it. So we know we're going to die. Cool. I'm not welcoming death to come early, but I just want you to think about this as a true statement. Everything you believe in your life to be true is because somebody told you or you read it somewhere. Now, if you have not challenged that to ask yourself, why do I believe this? Then you are believing someone else's belief. And what happens is, for example, the world is dangerous, people are bad. I have to always be on duty when I'm off duty. When I sit at a restaurant, I must keep my back to the wall to watch the doors and exits. I want you to honestly ask yourself, how many thousands of restaurants have you eaten at in your life? And how many times have you witnessed a crime, a murder, a robbery, a burglary, any assault at all? Chances are it's zero. And yet, you will still go sit at a restaurant or steakhouse with your spouse and your children, and you have your gun in your bag or in your pants or in your ankle, and you're just watching everyone. You're looking at people, you're looking at tattoos, you're looking at people the way they walk, listening to conversation, and you're just staying in this heightened state, dumping cortisol, hardening your arteries, and then you eat poorly, you don't sleep well, we don't exercise enough, and that times 20 and 30 years is why your heart just gives out, because you're living at about 1.6x the lifespan of a person that's not in these stressful environments. But the stress that a lot of us endure is voluntary. It's voluntary because I'll tell you, when I started reading and learning about brain and neuroscience and psychology as a hobby, when I was on the mental health unit, I just became so fascinated with our brains. And I learned about cortisol and how detrimental it was to us over periods of time. And so now, as like my FU to the culture and the system, I always sit with my back to a door at a restaurant. And I've been doing it for over 7-8 years now. And I'm on the road 25 days a month speaking or training with my company. I eat out way more than I would like to. And I sit with my back to the door, and I've never been injured, hurt, threatened, killed at all. You can choose to not live in stress. You can choose to because people ask me this all the time, Richard, in our training is like, but Joe, how do I turn it off? How do I turn it off? First of all, choose to turn it off. Just tell yourself, I am not going to be afraid. It's not about being ignorant. It's not about being unaware of your surroundings where you're just oblivious and your head in the sky. But at the same time, I don't have to be hyper vigilant. I don't have to there's a lot of people out there. I saw this video of a guy that's walking through the parking lot from a grocery store. And he's like, I make sure my wife pushes the carts or carries the bags. And you might think that it's because I don't have chivalry, but that's not the case. It's because I'm watching the parking lot and I'm looking under the cars. And I'm like, what? You might need to move if that's how dangerous your parking lot is. What the hell are you doing there? I don't agree with that mindset or logic at all. If you are walking everywhere just from the grocery store and scanning under vehicles and looking for threats all the time, you're probably going to die very young. And so that's just the binary choice we have. Please.
Can I ask you a question real quick?
Yeah.
Because you were talking about mindset. Obviously, you're talking about NLP and all that stuff. I talk about this a lot, is the reticular activating system, which I learned from Ed Milet, Tim Ferriss. And I believe that whatever you look for, you're going to find.
Facts.
So I'm sure that if somebody is looking for all this stuff, eventually you're going to find it. Yep. And for me, I rather, I choose, every year I have my own mental health summit. It's called Today I Decide. Today I decide to not live in fear because, like the great poet laureate Jim Morrison of the Doors said, nobody gets out of here alive.
Nobody.
So I try to enjoy every moment that I live, but I try to use my, you mentioned earlier, that even the computers, Facebook, Instagram, it's all using the RAS, but in a computer system. So I believe that if you find peace, if you look for peace, if you look for happiness, if you look for de-stressful situations, you're going to find it. But also the opposite, if you're looking for these things, you're going to find it. Correct?
Yep. 100%. Yeah. The brain only sees what it looks for. You will absolutely realize the thing you're focused on. So if you're looking for threats and danger and things to be afraid of, you will find it eventually. Just as if you're looking for peace and love and connection and homeostasis and joy, you will find that too. Now, Will good things happen if you're looking for the bad? Sure. Will bad things happen if you're only looking for the good? Sure. But again, it's a choice of where do you want to spend most of your time, because you're absolutely right. And all of these people are saying the same stuff. They just package it differently, Richard. And you're right, with Ed Milet and all these guys. It's like, yes, we know the truth about the science of our brain. And the more we learn about this is like, yeah, I want to tell my brain what to focus on that serves me, not to focus on things that aren't going to serve me, or they're going to lead me to being misery or uncomfortable or pissed off or frustrated or sick. Because I truly believe that we can think our way into sickness just as we can think our way into healing ourselves. And that's not for everything, obviously, but for a lot of our stuff, a lot of anxiety and depression that people experience, other than I get the genetic predisposition and the medication resistance. And I get there's multiple complex layers to all things mental health. But the people who are just living life with like, I have a slow, drippy faucet of depression and anxiety, I'm just always a little sad or anxious about stuff. It's like, yeah, learn to manage your mind. Like, learn to start supervising and take control of your mind, because like Marcus Aurelius says, the quality of your life depends on the happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts. Like, why not choose positive thinking? And it's not about toxic positivity. People always take that one statement and they're like, oh, so just be positive all the time about, like, no, it's about being rooted in reality. But toxic positivity or toxic optimism is an issue. But what I wish people would understand is the power of neutral thinking. It's not about toxic positivity, but it's not about dwelling and ruminating on negative stuff either. Like, just focus on what actually is. Do you have a home? Yeah. Are you gainfully employed? Yes. Do you have food? Yeah. Then, like, how bad is life really? We just lose perspective oftentimes, and we overcomplicate things. And again, we're a spoiled society for sure, as the Western culture and Americans. And, we just look for things to complain about or to be divisive over. And it's really unfortunate because it just perpetuates a lot of the suffering that's evident to us today.
And I love that. Now, like, I'm a child of God. I believe my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and I'm not afraid to say it. But anytime I wake up and I go to bed, I say, Lord, thank you for letting me be highly favored. Wherever I go, when I walk into a room, I'm highly favored. Am I going to get the best seat? Hell yeah. Am I going to get the best parking space? Yes. Am I going to get the best sales? Am I going to get the best relationships? Yes, because I'm highly favored. And I was talking to somebody that people think it's woo-woo. It's not woo-woo. That sometimes we can put something out mentally, it can go miles. And it's been proven brain waves can go miles. So do I want negativity coming at me in 4 miles, or do I want positivity coming at me in 4 miles?
Right. Yeah, we're energy. Yeah, humans are energy. So yeah, be a positive energy that spreads the positive energy that people want to be around, and not this like negative vampire where you just suck the good out of everybody because you can't get out of your own way, and again, I have empathy for those people because they just haven't had the experience or haven't experienced rock bottom enough yet, maybe, or I don't know what it is for some people. Because again, as someone that has really visited rock bottom probably 3 times in my life, it sucks down there. And now as someone, what I tell people, my goal is to maximize the human experience and I've done the same thing, Richard. It's funny you brought up your obituary. I had a mentor of mine when I was quitting the police department to focus on my business full time. He was like, hey, I want you to write your obituary. And I was like, Jesus, that's morbid. And he was like, no, just trust me, do it. And I took a couple weeks and I did it. But what he told me after I had done it was, he goes, all right, Joe, now this is a living document. Now it can change over time, but he goes, you took the time to put on this thing what matters most to you. If you're having to face a decision in your personal life or your business life, and it's not on this document, it's probably not that important. And it just was this beautiful perspective of like, oh yeah, this is really all that matters to me. What am I getting so worked up over for this? Which is why I am a huge advocate of Stoic principles and philosophies. And I love studying the Stoics, because it really comes down to just what is in your control versus what is not. And if it's not in my control, then why am I going to worry about it at all? And I'm a huge fan of Ryan Holiday and all his work with Stoicism. But yeah, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, the way these philosophers from thousands of years ago would talk and write, and to realize that it's still very true today, it just reminds us that nothing changes. The world changes drastically around us, but people are always going to be people. We all want the same thing throughout history. We just want to feel valued. We want to feel safe. We want to feel loved. And we can project that onto one another by being that, or we can project fear, hatred, just nasty, which is why I'm not a fan of, big media and news. And it's like just the propaganda of the media to keep people dumb and divided is really unfortunate. And so that's why for me, I know edutainment is a real thing, but I wish people would vet their entertainment sources. This is why I think podcasts are so great, because it's just raw, dynamic conversations with people coming together, sharing ideas without like a real agenda. Whereas the media is very agenda focused, and they have to be, because it's a business, right? It's a business that's got a lot of donors and funding behind it. And so podcast, at best, you're looking for a sponsor or a donor for something, but it's not controlling the narrative or who you talk to or how you talk to them or your beliefs. So you're not afraid to share something. And I'm a big fan of kind of the free speech media on podcasts. So kudos to you, Richard.
Me too. So, let's talk. I don't think it's a coincidence. Like if I have somebody that comes and sits in front of me that's failing or not succeeding, I'm not going to say failing, but not succeeding in life or business, and I ask them, show me your vision board, 9 out of 10 times they're going to say, I don't have one. Yep. Or I ask them, show me your books where your goals are written down. I don't have them. Yep. And I think there's something like, for me, I'm going on this has been weird. And I tell the story all the time, but I think it's really apropos of this. I've always wanted to go to Atlantis in the Bahamas. I've always wanted to go. My wife is deathly afraid of water. So I was like, we're never going to get there. We're never going to go on a cruise ship. Now, I've had a vision board in my house for 10 years with Atlantis and a picture of a ship on that vision board. She came to me last year, said, honey, we're going on vacation. I'm like, where are we going? She's like, Atlantis. We're going to the Bahamas. And now in 2 weeks, we're going again for the second time. But I believe if my video happened, because and Atlantis on my phone. So every time I picked up my phone, that was there. Just see something. Especially in business. Now we're going to hop onto the business section.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's mine or yours, Richard, but I'm checking my speeds. They're blazing, but you cut out a little bit on that last few seconds. So if you asked me a question, I definitely didn't hear it, but I think you're back now.
Okay. So my question is, how important, we're going to get talking about business now, is to have a vision board and to write your business and life goals on paper, not just in your phone.
Yes. I learned this through reading Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. I learned this through Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And then I learned this through Tom Bilyeu from Impact Theory. And I will tell you that, and this is something I share with everyone that we train, is I am admittedly a recovering naysayer, where I used to believe that was a whole bunch of fluff, and I really thought it was a bunch of bullshit, honestly. But I was a cop, right? And I think this is important for people to understand the fixed mindset versus growth mindset. A lot of cops have a fixed mindset. A lot of people that work in the military have fixed mindsets, and it's no fault of their own. It's just because when you're in a pension-based system, then that becomes the thing. That's the goal, is just, I want to make it to retirement. The problem is when you're no longer happy, you become a prisoner to that pension, and then you will not leave because, I have to finish this race to get that pension. And it's a really tragic and unfortunate thing that a lot of people fall victim to. I left with 15 years in policing. After doing 15 years, 5 years shy of a pension. And people were all over my case telling me how stupid I was, telling me, why would you waste 15 years? They're like, dude, you just have 5 more years and you'll get a pension. in San Antonio, you have to do 20 years. And they're like, just wait 5 more years. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not happy. And they're like, none of us are. But that doesn't mean we leave. And I'm like, that sucks, man. Like, that's a terrible place to be. I would really like to enjoy my life. And it's not this anymore because of all the reasons. And so it was my therapist who encouraged me to leave. So then I left, only have a business. And just to make this point, and I don't share this to brag, I don't share this to like try and impress anyone or be like, ooh, I'm cool. I share this to make a point of when I became a believer and transformed my mindset, what happened. As a business, we were a side hustle. Jesse and I were cops. We just did this for fun to make a little extra money. The best year we ever did was 2020, which was the year I resigned in September. But that year we did about $70,000 as a company of Solution Point Plus. Cool. But that's not enough to have both of our families to like quit your job on. And I quit the department. Jesse quit 2 weeks later. And then all we did was focus on the business. I paid for coaching right away. I paid for Tom Bilyeu to coach me about the critical decision-making goal, how to like set a goal, define a barrier to the goal, form a hypothesis. And it was this whole thing that he taught me. And I was like, okay, let's do this. Our business grew 100%, 1,000% that first year. We went from 70,000 to over 700,000. And then we went over 1 million. Then we went over 1.5 million. Then we went over 2 million. And this is a guy with no business background, no business degrees, a knuckle dragon Marine Corps cop that now gets into business. But it was really embracing and believing everything that these people were saying to me, getting a coach, and then listening to the words of him, then putting it into practice, writing down actual numbers of what I wanted to do for the business, writing down actual things I wanted to have in my life. And now it's not that I'm like rich. I pay myself a very modest salary because I just keep all the money going to the business to grow the business. And now that we have 12 people working for us, it's like we're all over North America, Canada, multiple states throughout the country. And it's amazing, but I haven't like forgotten where I've come from. I live a very simple life. I like to golf a lot, and I do have expensive taste for certain things. I love shoes. I like nice watches, and I like to go travel and play golf. Like, that's it. But I also love the fact that I'm sending money every month into like my financial advisor and my investment accounts. I love the fact that on my vision board, on my journal, on my phone, everywhere I have written, I just did this again this morning, actually, before I walked the dog, I wrote out my ideal life, because it's a reminder that I'm going to have 3 properties, nothing big. I don't want mansions, but like, and I'm going to share it with you, Richard, because again, I think also we speak it into existence, but I'm going to have 3 modest homes, all golf course communities, somewhere in the East Coast, maybe between the Carolinas and Florida, maybe somewhere in Texas, Dallas area, Arizona, Scottsdale area, maybe something in the Pacific Northwest. Ideally, small, modest, 2,000 square foot homes, golf course communities. I'm a member at all of them, and I just rotate between them based on the weather. And then all I do is work on my next book my next keynote speaking opportunity at a conference. And I just have a beautiful life that I love, that I wake up looking forward to, and it's fun. And it's because I'm working my ass off, making all the sacrifices now, but I have a vision of where I'm going. If we don't have a vision, if you're not writing down, and I would tell you this too, just as a piece of advice, a lot of people will say they have goals, but their goals have zero clarity. They don't have dates assigned to them. They don't have micro goals. They have no actions behind them. It's just a goal. Like, I want to make $1 million. Well, cool. But how, by when, doing what? And if you don't have hyper specificity, hyper clarity, it's never going to happen. And I want your audience to really understand that, because I used to think it was all trash. And now it's like, no, that is a huge part of my thought work every day, is visualizing exactly what I want to happen and just keep continuing to see it. And then I look for ways to make it happen. And then suddenly, boom, there it is. And I'm like, yeah. And it's not that it robs you of the joy, but I'll tell you this, as someone that's used this multiple times and hit my monetary goals, my fitness goals, I've lost 35 pounds in the last 6 months. Just whatever goal I have using this formula is, when I achieve it, it's not like this big, like, oh my God, shock. Why? Because I've already experienced it. I've already experienced the bliss before I ever have it. when I'm writing it down, I'm having the emotional experience of what it's going to be like to have this thing. So when it comes, I'm not ambushed by it. And that's why a lot of people that win the lottery, they're broke in no time because they haven't had a plan. They got too excited by it. I don't ever get success altitude. I'll tell you that much. I expect to be where I am. I expect to continue to rise and grow. And it's never a shock when I achieve something that I set my mind on, because I know exactly what I'm working towards. And some people might think that that's arrogance, but it really is about consistency, persistence, and just commitment to, choosing the right mindset, following, actually developing the habits to create the world you want to have. It's attainable, and you just have to get out of your own way.
And something that you mentioned, and I love that you mentioned it. If you don't have a feeling or an emotion attached to your goal, you're not going to achieve it. Like I had a friend, I mean, he was making high six figures, and he said to me, Rich, he's like, bro, I want to get a Lambo. And I'm like, okay, you can afford it. He's like, I want one. And I'm like, all right, come pick me up. He picked me up. We went to the Lambo dealer. He got in it, smelled the leather, touched the leather. We went for a test drive. He calls me 2 days later. He's like, bro, you're going to be home? And I'm like, yeah. He drove up in a bright yellow Lambo. He's like, the only reason I bought it is because I smelled the leather. I felt it. It became part of me. So when we went to Atlantis, I walked through some houses because I want a beach house that we're going to be getting in a little while. I wanted to touch the paint. I wanted to sit on the front steps and smell the ocean air. So now every time I'm looking at beach houses, that's what I feel.
Right.
And it brings me right back.
Yeah.
So that's what you're talking about, is having goals, but also have an emotion behind it, but also have an end date. Because a goal without an end date is just a dream.
Yep.
And that's what you teach, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's all about clarity, specificity, putting your deadlines on it, holding yourself accountable. And I would even challenge you to talk about it with other people. If you feel embarrassed sharing your goals with someone else, it's because you yourself don't believe it, that you can achieve it. If you don't feel like, I have no shame telling people like, yeah, I'm going to have 3 or 4 houses. And some people are like, oh my God, like the audacity, or like, well, no, because I'm going to work my ass off to get it. But that's not arrogance. That's not me trying to like one up anyone. There's people who own 150 houses or 1,000 houses, right? My goals are my goals, but I have no shame in telling people that. Like my screensaver, you brought this up, Richard. My screensaver is a Porsche, right? Because I want to have a Porsche 911 GTS. Like, that's one of the cars I would love to have. That's just like my toy. It's not functional for anything other than it's just great. It's cool. I love it. That's my screensaver. Why? Because I want one. And I would never be, I don't think so little of myself where I'm like, oh, I would never tell anybody that, because there's no way they would think that I could ever. I don't care if other people think I can do it or not. I care, do I believe I can do it? And I will tell you that that's a great test to check in with yourself. If you're afraid to share your goals with other people, there's probably something in you that doesn't believe you'll ever do it. And then you'll mask it in modesty and be like, well, no, I don't want to brag. I'll just show up with the win. I don't believe that. I rather you test the market, test yourself. Can you, with a straight face, tell someone, this is what I'm set to do? I want to build $1 million business. I want to build a 8-figure business. I want to do this. And like, do you believe it? And if you start genuinely believing it and telling people, because here's the other secret in business that's not a secret at all, is your network is your net worth. Like who you spend, it's part of what Richard was just talking about too, with touching the paint, smelling the leather. Get in the right circles. Like if you're hanging out with 5, I mean, they can be great people, but if they're like totally at peace with making 50,000 a year and just getting paycheck to paycheck and struggling, and that's good enough for them, and you're like, okay, I guess that's what we're going to do. No shame in that at all. But if you're like, I want to have high wealth, I want to make $1 million in my business, I want to pay myself $100,000, $150,000, $200,000 a year in salary, we'll start hanging out with those people. And you're going to learn very quickly their habits, their mindset, the things they do, the things they don't do, and you'll learn and you start to become, because all ships rise with the tide. Spend time with people you want to have your life look like. Like I would say that's why mentorship is so important, is like find someone that wants to give you a hand and help you, not handouts, but a helping hand. And again, just be true to who you are and find your tribe. And again, it's hard to lose when you surround yourself with a good community.
Yeah, and I love that. And like Dan Sullivan says, I love Dan Sullivan. Something that he says is live in your wants. Don't live in your needs. Everybody else lives in their needs. I live in my wants. I don't need a beach house. I want one.
Yeah.
I don't need a boat, but I want one.
And he has
So
no
it's
shame
always,
in sharing that. Yep.
no, but I'm also grateful for what I have. Like for
100%.
me, like when I clean my house and I'm wiping down the granite the tabletops, I'm like, thank you, Lord. Thank you for this home, but thank you for the beach house that's coming.
Yeah.
If you let me borrow the Kia, you're gonna let me borrow the Hummer. But
Yeah.
as long as my priorities are straight, and I believe
100%.
gratitude plays a major part, right?
Gratitude is, honestly, I think, just as self-awareness, we talked about the significance of that. I think gratitude is probably the single most important place to start anything, because it really will start to shape and shift your perspective when you can learn to become grateful. And the thing that I think it's important to note, because unless people are in this space, it's very easy for them to tune it out and be like, oh, just another, white guy bragging on his privilege and like the thing he wants in the world and all this stuff. And it's like, listen, I, like I'm aware of who I am, but at the same time, I'm aware of where I come from. And I'm not trying to brag on anyone to put anyone else down. And I'm not saying your way is wrong or better or worse at all. But what I think is important is, like, when we start to look at gratitude, it's not about not being grateful for the things we have and that it'll never be enough. People are like, you just want and want and want and want and want. And it's like, I don't think that that's true at all. I have very clear vision, goals on what it is that I want. But to the point you made, Richard, like, I'm very grateful for what I have. I'm very grateful for the home I have. I'm very grateful for my family. I'm very grateful for my dog, who's like the true love of my life, my golden doodle. I'm grateful that I have a business that has money coming in. There's no guarantees. I might be out of business next year, right? Because that's just how it is. I do everything in my power to make sure that's not the case, but it's just a constant grind. I'm grateful for the challenge that is put before me every day to be a self-employed person that's created a business that now is taking care of multiple people's families. And to me, that pressure is a privilege. And so I'm very grateful for that. And I start every single day, and I tell people this too, because I travel a lot. Every day starts the same for me. When I wake up, my alarm goes off, and I ask myself 3 questions. Where am I? Why am I here? And who contributed to this? Now, typically I'm on the road, right? So just a few days ago, I was out in Galveston, Texas, speaking at a adult protective services conference. And shout out to APS. Love it. They bought 750 copies of my book, Unarmed. 750 copies. Really appreciate. And I remember waking up and it's like, where am I? I'm in Galveston, Texas. Why am I here? I'm here to love on the people. There was 750 people in attendance at the conference. And who contributed to this? Well, University of Texas is like the paying force. Adult Protective Services for the state of Texas is the ones who organized it. And then the people specifically that I was working with to do all the coordination to get us out there for our reservations and everything. That is every day, because it roots me in present moment. I'm not future tripping. I'm not dwelling on the past. I am rooted in the present moment. And if we start every day with being genuinely rooted in present moment, it makes the world so much safer. It makes the world so much more real and genuine, because it's the mind that starts to leak out and start worrying about future things of like, well, what if they don't like my session later? Why am I worried about that now? That's in 6 hours. What is happening right now? And that's why, even for you right now, Richard, like, this is the single most important thing to me, is our conversation together. This is as a husband, as a father, like as a dog owner, as a business owner. The most important thing is my conversation with you, because it's the thing happening right now. And when we can learn to find that place of just fully present gratitude, I'm telling you right now, it massively, massively increases your ability to experience joy because it's just always there. And now it doesn't make you immune to bad thoughts or bad things, right? I'm still human. I still have shitty emotions that don't serve me. I still have insecurities. I still get caught up in my own drama. And I will very quickly, way faster than before, realize like, okay, where is this coming from? What is this emotion telling me? Because emotions are the language of our subconscious. And now, like, do I need to do anything with this? Can I change this? Can I make this better or worse? What am I going to do to make this better in this moment? And then it's just about working your way through it, not just I'll go eat more, consume porn, do something I shouldn't do that's going to make it worse. And that's where it comes down to the choice. But it takes a lot of self-awareness on the back of having immense gratitude.
And I love that. And as we're winding down, I love James Clear's book, Atomic Habits,
Yep.
that you have to win the day. But in my vernacular, in order for me to win the day, I have to win the hour. Yep. I have to win the minute, and then I have to win the second. So I'm focused on hanging out with Joe. I'm not worried about what I got to do tomorrow or the next day. So, and I believe that this is for somebody out there. I don't know who it's for, somebody, but your spouse and your kids deserve your presence more than your presence. And I think it all comes down to being in the moment. When I'm with my wife and my kids, I'm with my wife and my kids. My phone is away, the computer's off. So I think in order to win the day, you got to win the hour, the minute, and then the second, right?
Absolutely. I tell people your days are your life in many, and how you live your day is how you live your life. And so, yes, especially if you have a TBI or a mental health issue, sometimes you have to break it down to the micro, to the seconds, to the minutes. As you get healthy, as you start to do the work, then it's like, yes. Because I tell people too, anytime someone says I had a bad day, right away I'm like, but did you really? Like, did you really have a bad day? Or did you have a bad moment? Because I think all days have good and bad moments in them if you're just paying attention. But it's hard for me to believe someone had a bad day unless they're like, in a third world country, or they're in a war right now, or something catastrophic is happening. But if you have some basic human needs and safety and like love, and you're nourished and you've got food and a place to sleep, I think we lose perspective. And so I tell people, I can tell you exactly what your life will look like 5 years from today if I just measure one day. And it's the same with, you brought up Atomic Habits, great one, but so is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, right? Yeah. Where it's like 15-minute increments. Just measure your day. John Maxwell talks about like the rule of 10,000 hours, and just like 15 minutes a day, look at what are you doing in that 15 minutes? And then why are you doing it? And if you just measure that over one day and you change nothing, nothing's going to change, right? And I don't want to just speak in platitudes, but that's really what it comes down to. And so Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about the fact that we are a series of automated habitual routines. 95% of our life is a series of automated habitual routines, meaning we do the same shit every day. So if you're great with that, cool. I'm not. So now it's like, okay, how can I take that 5% variance and make it 25%? How can I make it 30%? I'm going to talk to someone new today. I'm going to do a podcast with Richard. I'm going to read a new book. I'm going to watch a new thing. I'm going to do something I wouldn't normally do that's going to stretch my comfort zone, because I'm going to go to a random chamber event for the Chamber of Commerce with my wife. I have no real desire to do it, but you know what? That's not something I would normally do. Let me go see what I can get out of this. And what do you know? It like fills me up. It challenges me. It's something new and exciting. Awesome. But are we willing to push ourselves instead of just only seeking out that which is convenient and comfortable, because this is just who I am. It's the way it's always been. And we just settle in complacency. For me, that is not maximizing the human experience.
And I love that 10,000 hours. Like I tell everybody, if you want to be one of the best guitar players in the world, spend 15 minutes a day playing. Yep. And you'll be better than 95% of the guitar players out there. Even if you just spend, like you said, 15 minutes a day. Because even Bruce Lee says, I'm not afraid of the guy that can throw 10,000 kicks. I'm afraid of the guy that can do that one kick 10,000 times.
Yep.
So Joe, what do you got coming up? What's going on in your world, in your business, and how do we find you? How do we get in your ecosystem?
Yeah, thanks, Richard. And I tell people in order. I'm trying to grow my Instagram because that's where, like, for my next book deal, they, like publishers, they love a large Instagram following. I've done a terrible job at asking the selfish thing of like, hey, follow me. I've never done it until my book came out, and I realized it took way longer to get out than it should have. But in this world that we're in, you just have to ask your ask. So Instagram,
Yeah.
LinkedIn, and Facebook. Those are my three in order that I would love to connect with people on. Instagram and LinkedIn are just Joe Smarro, and the spelling is on your show there. There's no W on the end. And then on Facebook, it's actually Joseph Smarro. It's my legal formal name, but Joe Smarro and everything. Also, my website, www.joesmarro.com. And then my company is called Solution Point Plus, and that is all spelled out, www.solutionpointplus.com. That's the business website. The Joe Smarro website is my personal one for the book, for keynote speaking, conferences, breakouts. And now the next phase, because you asked where we're going, something I'm starting to do more of and put more emphasis on is that keynote speaking and conference opportunities. Because I have 12 people working with us right now, we've got the training going really well. Again, we've got multiple contracts across the country, federal contracts, statewide contracts, contracts in Canada. So the training side is going really well. We are looking at probably bringing on 2 to 3 new clients next year on a 1 year minimum. But right now we're doing well with that. Personally, I am looking to do more of the keynote speaking and conference breakouts. I love doing those. I love those engagements with audiences, and that's all things on, again, leadership, mental health, de-escalation, self-care, wellness, resiliency, and yeah, if that's some business, again, veterans, first responders, that's my jam. So if there's an event or a conference that's coming up, I would love to be considered for it. And that's really the short-term horizon, Richard, is just more. I'm trying to create and build the brand awareness because we've had great success. Again, our financials are great, but we've been pretty lucky too. And I'm actually working directly with Alex Hormozy. Shout out to Acquisition. But
Yeah.
he said, hey, you've done a great job, but now we want to help you do everything that you've done and you've gotten lucky. We want to help you do all that on purpose. And that's where I've been focusing now, is like being intentional, setting up those strategies and processes to help us make sure we have a sustainable business and not just a flash in the pan. Even though we are technically 7 years into this, I still admit I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but I'm figuring it out. And I love people hard. And like my mentor told me, Joe, there's nothing wrong with doing good while doing good. As long as your first doing good is serving people and showing up and loving them, the financial rewards and your heavenly crowns will be earned. Don't focus on that. Just focus on serving each other. And again, it's why I am selfish. And I'll end with this, Richard, unless you have more questions. But if there's one takeaway I could offer people, it's that I wish everyone that's watching this or listening to this, and kudos if you've made it all almost 90 minutes here, but I really want you to learn to become more selfish and understand the difference between being selfish for selfish reasons and being selfish for selfless reasons. And I want you to be selfish for selfless reasons. Like, you are the single most important thing in this world. Chapter 8 of my book, the last chapter, or I'm sorry, chapter 7, but it's you deserve tomorrow. And as someone that works really hard to prevent, to the point where I would love to see a year where we eradicate suicide collectively. And I don't know that it'll ever happen. That's the vision statement. It's not likely to be attained. But my focus is always on people understanding that when you get to that darkest place of despair and you think you want to die, there is hope on the other side if you can just wait it out. And again, when we can learn to love ourselves, prioritize ourselves, because here's what I believe to be true is that the reason why a first responder, especially, but all people, but the reason a first responder will consider taking their own life is because for whatever reason in that moment, putting a gun in their mouth or taking the pills or however they choose to do it, but typically with cops, it's firearms, more than 80%. I would rather put a gun in my mouth and pull the trigger because that has become a better alternative than feeling this emotion. And I'm not minimizing suicide by any means, but that's ultimately what it comes down to is I don't want to feel this emotion. And this emotion is scary. This emotion sucks. And so because of this, I'm going to do these behaviors and things that are going to create chaos. And now I feel like suicide's the only way out. It's not. You deserve tomorrow. Tomorrow needs you. You are a miracle. The odds of you being here are 1 in 400 trillion. So learn to love yourself. And the better you are for yourself, then you can show up and love other people in a much better way, in a much healthier way. And then it's not love through reciprocity or trying to receive. It's not transactional. This is why I title my TEDx talk, I See You. It's from Avatar. But it's like, hey, not only do I see you, but I want you to see me in return. Richard, I see you. I see the work you're doing. I see the podcast you have. I see the love you have for people and the platform you've created to give people a voice. And I want you to see me too. I want you to see me as a man that is just on the journey, trying to find my own way, that shows up for myself, that still goes to therapy, that loves hard and isn't afraid to talk about it. And it's, yes, I see you, but I want you to see me too. And together we can see each other. And I am only because we are. And so that's how you can find me. That's what's happening. And that's my TEDx finality there, Richard. I'm sorry, I get long-winded a little bit, but
Oh, I love it. And guys, if you're struggling right now, you can reach out to Joe. You can reach out to me. Or if you're in dire need, dial 988 right now. Get the help that you need. And we've both been in therapy about the same time. So even us, we still need therapy. And even like the great athletes, even great coaches need coaches. So if you think you need help, reach out to one of us, reach out to somebody, or dial 988. So Joe, brother, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on. Hopefully we can build a generational relationship from this point on. And I'm so grateful and humble. And guys, if you drink energy drinks, I get the sugar-free Monster. Check out Monster Energy. And also, if you guys like new swag, if you like swag, it's hoodie season. Pick up a hoodie or a t-shirt, or 100% of the proceeds go to end veteran suicide. So guys, but I always end with this. I believe, like Joel Osteen says, when we wake up in the morning, we can choose to be a victor or a victim. And if you listen to this show, you're no longer a victim of your past, but you're a victor of your present and your future. Thank you guys for always showing up. Joe, I love you, brother. Thank you so much. This was so much fun. I can go 5 hours just talking to you.
Hell yeah.
And I'm so grateful, brother. Thank you so much.
Love you, buddy. Take care.
I love you. And guys, remember, vertical momentum. The only way to go is up. I love you guys. Take care of yourselves and take care of one another.